Hey guys, welcome back to Dream Analytica. My name is R. This is part 2 of my descent into the unconscious. I titled this drawing, which I'm going to show on that side of the screen, the Enlightenment. And I just want to quote Carl Jung here about his comment on the nature of enlightenment. And the quote is as follows: "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." So in the drawing that I'm showing here, as you can see, especially if you've watched my previous video on the first drawing that I shared, the forms have gone from pretty much chaos to chaotic. And it's very difficult to describe, but I'm going to try my best, and I do apologize if I'm not articulating properly. My mind moves a lot faster than my uh, ability to speak or express myself with words. I'm also an INTP, so our natural way of expressing ourselves is extroverted intuition. So it's really difficult to use words to describe intuition. But I'm going to try my best, and hopefully you can follow along. So essentially what I tried to do with the drawing, I'll first state that I drew the drawing with my left hand and my right hand, so it was a combination of both. That's pretty much why my right hand is on the drawing there, because I initially started out with my left hand, and I expressed myself in the previous video why I chose to draw with my left hand, and I believed at the time that it would activate some parts of my psychology that I had never accessed before. And the previous drawing was actually the first time I've ever drawn any sort of shape, let alone such a complicated shape form, with my left hand. And it ultimately activated a different side of my brain, um, particularly my unconscious aspect. So in this image, I'm trying to describe the process first, and then I'll go more into trying to describe what the actual image is. So the the process for this was, it didn't occur in one day. This took several days, and a lot had happened during those several days in terms of my psychology. I expressed myself in the previous video that for that drawing, I went in so deep, it almost felt like I was going a little bit crazy, that I was experiencing some sort of schizophrenic episode, uh, or what I believe in myself is to, or what I believed in myself was that I had experienced some form of schizophrenia by going that deep into my unconscious. Because, like I explained before, the ego consciousness is sort of like this bubble, and that boundary layer, which is very thin, is what separates the conscious mind from the unconscious. And essentially what I believed in schizophrenia is like that boundary is sort of dissolved. And when that happened to me, the unconscious just was just erupting from the depths of my psyche and coming to the surface, and sort of intersecting with my conscious mind. And so I could see a lot of things. I could, a lot of insight, a lot of visions, very terrifying. So essentially, in this image, what had happened was that I believe that I had finally activated my anima, my feminine side. I coined this the Enlightenment because of essentially what Carl Jung says. It's you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light. You become enlightened by making the darkness conscious. And so, um, and I'll dive a little bit into my personality type, which is an INTP, but essentially I had activated my feeling side. So it was like the floodgates had been opened, and this was one of the most intense experiences of my life and the most confusing and chaotic periods of my life so far. Knock on wood. The reason being was because, like I mentioned, the floodgates had opened. Essentially, all these feelings that have been repressed within me for pretty much my whole life because of just how I was, just because of the way my psychology is structured with thinking in the front and feeling in the back. All these feelings came to the surface, erupting like a volcano. I couldn't take it at the time. Um, I do remember I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were living together, and I distinctly remember that um, I really can't explain this properly, but the events that followed were I I just started crying, and it was sort of in the middle of this drawing, so like I just was in front of her and I just started crying, and then she's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I pretty much had a download of all these visions. I wish I could articulate myself, and I'll try my best, but I just had this major download of visions, like just one after the other. And essentially, what those visions were tied to my anima, but not my personal anima. It was more of like the collective anima archetype, the feminine archetype of the collective unconscious. And I had essentially had visions and feelings of, this is going to sound very strange, but it happened in my experience, was all the suffering of women around the world, not just of currently, but of it, it almost felt like of all time. I just and then I could feel like my mother, my sister, my half sister, um, just the depth of suffering is what I can describe it as, and the visions that came with it was just the emotional pain that they had been repressing for so long was just coming to the surface. And like I said, it wasn't just my immediate family. I got visions from the past, like it's gonna sound weird, but like even of the witch hunt, and it was so intense. And then I, this is gonna get to the scary side because I also saw the collective, and forgive me, but the collective evil of women, like the capacity for evil in women, um, because of that suffering. Like the it's almost like this vengeful force, and it also tied with, like, as you can see in the background in the image, there's nature. So this image was intimately tied to nature. It, and how the earth goddess, I would call it, the feminine side of nature, was in absolute rebellion. And why did that vision come to me? I don't know. All I know is that I activated my feeling side, and all those images came to me, and it was I'm literally shaking right now because of how terrifying it was. So essentially, what I would call a divine experience, um, as if I saw the feminine goddess. I don't know. It sounds crazy, but like let's just say like it was a like what people see when they take ayahuasca, or maybe like a bad LSD trip. Um, it was almost as if the feminine goddess was angry at me, um, like I was the one who was being or I took the brunt of the anger of the feminine aspect, and I understand maybe like yeah, maybe as a man I do deserve it because of, like I said, my personality type is an INTP, so maybe I had been repressing all these feelings in my personal unconscious for so long that it finally erupted and was just pissed off. Um, but at the same time, despite that anger, I felt immense empathy and sympathy, um, just an immense sympathy and empathy, and the depth of the pain, the depth of repression, just how much women around the world had put up with for so long, um, and all these visions. When I say visions, try to link them up with feelings. So like I literally felt the pain, the deep, deep pain of women, and I I don't want to say that I experienced that pain because there's no way that I did, but I got a taste of it, like what it actually was like on the other side of the picture as being a male, and finally understanding, like putting myself in their shoes to understand just first of all how chaotic their minds are. The From my analysis, and for the many years that I've been practicing Jungian psychology and observing my clients as well, that the woman's mind is far more complex. It's very complex. A woman's dreams are far more esoteric, far more convoluted, abstract, but at the same time, they're very artistic and very emotionally deep and creative and poetic. I always use that word because when one of my clients shared her dream with me, it was so poetic. I'm kind of digressing here, but I just wanted to share my experiences of what I understand as the feminine psychology. So ultimately, what that uh, let's coin it based on Jungian psychology as active imagination. What that active imagination did for me, and by the way, active imagination is a conscious dialogue between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind actively. So during waking hours, and I explained this in a previous video that the normal way the unconscious communicates with consciousness is normally through dreams, and that's how you analyze someone's psychology. It's because dreams offer a prognosis and diagnosis of the person's psychology, essentially showing you where their imbalances are and how, and the dream shows you how to where the compensation is. So you can, by a method of deduction, deduce where they're either overcompensating or undercompensating in conscious awareness. And then once you interpret the dream, it sort of balances it out, their consciousness with the unconscious, and harmonizes the two. So during this process of active imagination, I went through a lot. So what I tried to do is, because from the previous drawing, I understood that the unconscious, there's no measurement down there. There's no scale. There's no reference point. That there's nothing to hold on to, which means um, the best way to describe it is there's no solid form down there which you can relate to. So what I ultimately did was I took something from reality, in this case my hand, and then tried to describe what I was feeling and seeing. simultaneously with this drawing. And essentially, the whole image is the collection of my unconscious locations. Like, almost think of it like the dreamland. Like, in this entire image, everything is moving, everything is transforming and transmuting into one form to another. Nothing is absolute or stagnant. Everything is just constantly moving. And you can sort of see, again, this is up to your interpretation for the drawing, but I'm sure you could see like a sort of wing shape. There's also a crown. There's also a bird, which I had actually done a previous drawing. Had this crazy dream about a bird representing the cycles of life and death. But anyways, and then you see the heart, which left and right is very important in dreams. The left usually represents intuition, the unconscious, and the side of the heart. And right is the opposite, which usually represents reality and consciousness and rationality. So drawing it with my left hand essentially went into the unconscious and the side of the heart. And I'm reaching it into it with my right hand, which was trying to bring the unconscious into consciousness. Um, there's also a lot of numbers in there, but you can't really read it from that perspective. Um, yeah, and it's essentially a map as well. So the whole thing is a symbol, and the symbol represents the feelings that I experienced, but also my unconscious. So it's like an unconscious map. Like, to me, this image is very familiar. Um, to everyone else, it's just chaos, but to me, it's familiar. Like I know where I'm going. Like, if you go into the image, like it's like a map. Like, I know where that is. I know where that is. In my psychology, it's very difficult to describe, but essentially that think of it like a map too. Um, anyways, and then like I said before, like I'm using my hand from reality as a sort of reference point, and the only reference points you have here is proportion. So proportion does exist in the unconscious. Um, it is a matter of what the size of one thing is relative to another thing. So it's all relative in the unconscious as well. And yeah, some a little bit more on the feelings that I had experienced. I mentioned that crying. It gave me so much insight into the feminine psychology and just how deep uh, the feminine psychology goes in terms of what they actually know. Um, Maybe for a guy, this or a man, this doesn't mean much, but for a woman, I think they know just exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the depth of the chaos and the depth of the turmoil in their psychology, and that internal turmoil, it's so frustrating because there's nothing to ground you in. Again, I'm a guy, I'm a male trying to describe the feminine psychology. It's very difficult, so please forgive me if I'm not doing it justice, but I'm trying my best. But the depth of the pain, the depth of the suffering, ultimately that pain and that hurt evokes an emotional response, which is usually anger and a desire for vengeance and revenge. And so essentially the feminine deity of our consciousness of the unconscious is in rebellion now against the masculine, which is why you hear things like the matriarchy is now in rebellion against the patriarchy. This is why the feminine and the masculine have almost become inverted. Like women are becoming more masculine and men are becoming more feminine. There's this reversion to the opposites, a conjunctio in psychological in Jungian terms. Conjunctio is the converting of opposites. Um, and this imbalance is creating very deep turmoil in the collective unconscious, a very dangerous imbalance. And yeah, that was my experience and my understanding and my obviously I'm not describing it. What I mean is obviously I'm not sharing all my insights here because it's too much. I think it's more about the drawing really. Um, but the next drawing you'll see is like the culmination of everything. So like I said, it was a gradation from less chaotic forms to very chaotic. And then the very last drawing, like I described in my previous video, because my body could literally no longer take it, I would probably have gone insane if I kept going any deeper. I don't even think I could go any deeper. It's the culmination. So the form is refined. It's very clean, and I coined it the Holy Grail, or in other words, synonymously, the Philosopher's Stone, which is like finding the yourself in your psychology, finding the totality, almost like a reward for going through hell, and yeah, reaching that sort of in Jungian terms, it's called individuation. But finding the Philosopher's Stone in alchemical terms is like the holy grail of the process of alchemy, is trying to get the Philosopher's Stone. Um, and that one I'll describe in the video of why I called it that, and because of the feelings associated with it, essentially. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and part one. I really enjoy making these videos and talking about my art because I think it's kind of rare for an artist to actually understand psychology as well, and not only that, Jungian psychology, which really can sort of bring together the two elements of art and psychology. And as a matter of fact, they are one, they're not separate. Our art and psychology are intimately linked to each other. And I think it's really valuable for someone to be able to descend, first of all, into their unconscious, and be an artist, um, and understand psychology, and then be able to document it. And I tried to do my best, and I, like, you can see clearly that I drew it on just a random notebook, because I had no interest in impressing anyone. I really did that as a means of documenting my experiences in my into my unconscious, as a way of studying my own psychology, not from some textbook, not from some school, not to get a certificate or a degree, but to really understand my own psychology. And I believe, from my experience, that understanding your own psychology enables you to understand everyone's psychology. And you don't need a degree for that. You don't need a degree to become an artist. I think it's a bit ridiculous that uh, people think psychology is it is what it is today, in my opinion. Um, Obviously, not many people are going to share that opinion because they've invested so much time and money into the understanding of psychology, but ultimately you just have to understand your own psychology, and that enables you access to everyone's psychology, and therefore you become a psychologist. A good one too, because you went to your own depths, you went through your own hell, you lived out the experiences that many psychologists probably have never even witnessed, and you've seen things and experienced things that enable you to now share with the world, um, to help them, guide them through their own psychology. Because uh, it's like working out. Like you want to know your body, right? You want to know your mind. You want to learn how it works and how to control it and how to essentially live properly and become whole, which is what individuation is. It's to integrate the unconscious factors of your psychology into consciousness, ultimately to become whole. The word holy is derived from that. It's to become whole, to embrace all the aspects of yourself, all the disparate personalities that reside within yourself. And yes, we are composed of disparate personalities, not just one. And it's about using, and here my friend laughed at me when I said this, but Jesus was right. You need to love all those parts of yourselves, no matter how scary, no matter how different, no matter how unacceptable it is to society. You need to love all those parts of yourselves, and you do that through dream analysis, which is the easiest way. It's not the only way, but it is the easiest way and the most elegant way to integrate that through understanding it, by bringing those characters into consciousness, to understand that when you dream about someone, it's a part of you. And if you don't like that someone in the dream, that means that's a part of you that you don't like. And you need to embrace that part of you, to integrate that part of you, and to love that part of you in order to become whole. And that is the goal of Jungian psychology. It's about integration. And yeah, so thank you for watching. And as I mentioned before, I do have clients. So if you would like your dreams analyzed or psychology analyzed, I developed a website where you can reach out to me at www.dreamanalytica.com. I've also developed an application on the App Store because I'm having a lot of issues with Google right now. But it's available on the App Store, where you can learn about Jungian psychology or analytical psychology. And it's a really useful tool to have in your toolkit, because it also provides information regarding personality types. So if you're dealing with someone, when you're at a coffee shop or something, you could easily just pull up the app and then do a bit of instant research on that person's psychology, depending on their personality type, and kind of decipher them on the spot and how they behave and how they like to be talked to, or stuff like that. And you can also record your dreams on it, which is, in my opinion, one of the healthiest things you can do for your psychology is writing your dreams down. And it also teaches you how to interpret your dreams. So, useful app. I am continually improving it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.